Okay. Well, we'll probably have some other folks, I think, joining us and hopping on in over the course of probably the next 5, 10 minutes or so. But instead of making all of us wait to get started, we'll go ahead and jump in. One request, if possible, if you're in a place where you're able to have your camera turned on, I would love to be able to see your faces. Uh, I know that if you're not, that there's zero pressure to do that. But yeah, as odd as Zoom is, I know that this feels a little bit disconnected, but there's something about being able to see each other's faces that I do think is important about this time together. Right now, everyone is muted, and we're going to kind of keep it that way for a little bit. We're going to still do sort of the responsive liturgy that we've been doing together, but we'll stay muted apart from me, just to make sure we don't kind of get the cacophony of like internet echo and delay and all of that stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and say these words from 1 Corinthians 13, then I'll take a moment to pray, and we'll dive in to some of the things that we'll be talking about in just a few moments. So let's say together, you can just repeat after me whenever I say these phrases. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. Love is not arrogant or rude. Love does not insist on its own way. Love is not irritable or resentful. Love does not rejoice at wrongdoing. Love rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things. Love believes all things. Love hopes all things. Love endures all things. Let's pray together. Father, we are grateful that you are a God who is sovereign even over our internet connection, that even in a time where we are not able to meet for this class in person, you have, through your common grace, given us ways to be able to come together and consider your word, consider its implications on our lives, and especially as we think about what it means to not bear false witness against our neighbors. That you would be at work through your spirit, shaping us even now into people who look and love more like Jesus. And so we ask these things in his name with great hope and confidence. Amen. Super thankful to have you all joining us this morning. I know that some of us are kind of either coming from worship, some of us are worshiping at home, some of us might be hopping off at the end to come to worship in person. But I just wanted to say first, super thankful for your flexibility and willingness to kind of pivot to Zoom once again this week. And the second thing is keep an eye out for kind of more information moving forward. There's a chance we'll kind of continue in this format as we kind of finish out the class, but we're also trying to think through what is the best way to do this if we're not all together in person, or if we aren't able to be in person, especially with folks kind of coming back and forth for people who are worshiping in person at either service. I know that it can be a little bit of a rush to try to get here and then get to a place where you can log into class and do this online, or to be doing this online and then be trying to get to worship in person. So we'll have kind of more updates to come. We're kind of working to figure out what the best setup will be moving forward. But again, super thankful to have you here today. As you've probably seen, if you've been kind of following along in our syllabus, the thing that we've decided to cover this morning is essentially the ninth commandment, and that's the commandment: you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. We see that in Exodus chapter 20, verse 16. It also is kind of repeated by Moses in Deuteronomy 5. But today, especially as we kind of consider this in the context of this class, we're sort of asking, what does this have to do with our politics? How does this shape our speech? How does this shape the way we think, how we interact with people on social media and in other spaces like that? And I think just from the get-go that this is a topic where it is very, very easy for us to sort of want to point fingers and look and say, oh, this is a problem either with politicians, with kind of people out there. But I really want this to be a space this morning where we're kind of focusing on what this means for us. I want us to kind of look inward and look at our own temptations, our own particular ways that we struggle to do this well. Because the reality is, especially in a context like ours, where it often feels so divided, so kind of polarized, this is something that I think all of us need to work on, kind of no matter where we're at. And so to kick things off this morning, I'm actually going to have us break off into our breakout rooms again. And if you've done this before, I know that doing kind of discussion groups via Zoom is a very different experience than doing it in person. But I would love for you to try to participate if you're in a space where you're able to do that. We'll kind of break off into probably groups of 5 or so. And I want us to think through, just to kind of get our mental juices flowing. Okay, this commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And I want every group to kind of think about this and ask, what are 2 or 3 things that this commandment tells us not to do? And then I want us to think about what are 2 or 3 things that this commandment actually requires from us. And so I want us to go beyond just kind of the simple words on the page, you shall not bear false witness. And I want us to start to kind of unpack some of the implications of what's going on here. And so this is a space where, once again, you'll want to probably turn your microphone on when we're doing this. And let's see. It's going to kind of look like you're breaking off into another call, but we'll split off and be in a few different rooms in just a moment or so. Okay, I think almost everyone is back at this point. And so thinking through kind of what this commandment is getting at, what are some things that this is kind of telling us not to do? What are some of the things that it requires us to do? I would love to hear from a few of you. What were some of the things that came up in your groups? This is a space where you can turn off your microphone and hop in. The floor is yours. I mean, turn on your microphone, turn off mute.
So I'll go first, Sam.
Yeah.
We talked about how the 9th commandment reflects a broader commitment to truth and a love of truth. And it's not merely about not lying, but also not causing other people to believe falsehoods. And we can do that by mischaracterizing things, misleading things, leaving out the truth, or even passing on information that we don't have a strong reason to believe is true, right?
Yeah.
On rumors or gossip or those sorts of things.
Yes, absolutely. It's awesome. Thanks. Anyone else? Anything else come up in some of the things that you all talked about?
Sam, one of the things that came to mind for us, this is Mark, particularly after we had just done our 1 Corinthians 13 liturgy, was the benefit of running things we say through the filter of that definition of love.
Yes.
And is what we're communicating designed to build up and to spread hope and things like that, or is it going to have a tendency to tear down and destroy? And so that could be a helpful filter to help us.
Yes. Yeah, that's super helpful. It's not just about like not lying. It's not about simply not misleading people, but also like how am I positively communicating in ways that reflect love of God, love of neighbor, love for truth, and all of that. Yeah, this is all I think really, really helpful. And Kyan actually kind of nailed the phrase that I want, the big idea that I want to communicate this morning is that the ninth commandment is not just about not lying. It is much, much bigger than that. It certainly does have to do with our speech, the things that we say, the things that we communicate, but it also has to do with how we think. It has to do with how we listen. It's about how we respond to like claims made about other people, things how we process things we read on the internet, how we listen to things we hear on like podcasts or the radio. And I'm especially thinking when we're talking about claims made about other people, I'm especially thinking of claims that are either speculative or accusatory or damaging to another person's reputation in some way. John Frame is a professor at a seminary in Orlando, Reformed Theological Seminary. He has this huge, massive, thick book called The Doctrine of the Christian Life, where sort of what he does in a big part of the book is kind of walk through the 10 Commandments and looks at some of the different implications of each of them. And how he defines the sin of false witness is the sin of false witness is that of distorting the facts in such a way as to harm one's neighbor. And I think that's important, that kind of broadens it out from just talking about speech, just talking about kind of lying as a particular expression of this. And a few things to note as we kind of think about this more broadly is the language of witness comes from the world of legal testimony. And I think part of that is because in many ways, bearing false witness about someone else is like genuinely a form of theft. It's sort of a theft of truth. It can be theft of another person's reputation, and theft even in some ways of like reality itself, as we distort certain facts in order to kind of get an advantage or achieve the things that we want. And so if we were to kind of boil this commandment down to two major obligations, I think we could say that this involves promoting truth and resisting falsehood. So those are kind of the twin realities that this commandment is calling into. But at this point, obviously we're going to unpack this more as we go along. But does anyone have any comments? Does anyone have any thoughts, questions that have come up about any of this? It's okay if you don't.
One thing that came up in our group, this is Kevin speaking, was that the media isn't always the most trustworthy carrier of truth. And I mean, that was a theme I'd never heard before this political era, this fake news, just to make to put a conjecture out there and make it a story.
Yeah.
That they've run long and deep with those kinds of things in the current era. And it seems like that trips across both of those tripwires you've got there.
Yeah.
Truth resisting falsehood. I mean, so, and then the story doesn't get cleaned up later.
Yeah, no, that I think is super important. We're gonna kind of even get into some of that in a little bit, in that like there is both the like kind of internal reality of our own sin, our own kind of proneness to fall into not doing this well, but there are lots of like external factors in that the sources we read, the things we listen to, rarely are like completely unbiased. And so we're constantly kind of filtering through things and saying, okay, what's actually going on here? What what is rooted in truth and what is maybe kind of a distortion in order to kind of advance a particular agenda. And so I want to, the first question I kind of want us to think through this morning is like, what does it look like to do these things well? What does it look like? What does it mean to actively promote truth and to actively resist falsehood? And the first thing that I want to do, can I have someone volunteer to read this next quote that I'm putting on the screen here? This comes from the Westminster Larger Catechism. And essentially, this was a kind of a 17th century document that was put together in kind of a question and answer format in terms of kind of teaching the like basic doctrines and ethics that come along with kind of the Christian faith. And at one point, there's sort of this long series of questions on the 10 commandments, kind of, okay, what are the duties required and what are the sins forbidden? And I would love for someone to read the answer to question 144. What are the duties required in the 9th commandment? Can someone volunteer to do that?
I'll do it.
Awesome.
The duties required in the 9th commandment are the preserving and promoting of truth between man and the good name of our neighbor as well as our own, appearing and standing for the truth, and from the heart, sincerely, freely, clearly, and fully, speaking the truth and only in the truth, in matters of judgment and justice, and in all other things whatsoever. A charitable esteem of our neighbors, loving, desiring, and rejoicing in their good name, sorrowing for and covering of their infirmities, freely acknowledging of their gifts and graces, defending their innocency, a ready receiving of a good report, and unwillingness to admit of an evil report concerning them, discouraging talebearers, flatterers, and slanderers, love and care of our own good name, and defending it when need requireth, keeping of lawful promises, studying and practicing of whatsoever things are true, honest, lovely, and of good report.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. I would love to hear like
soundbite, right?
Yeah, 30-second soundbite. Yeah. What stands out when you hear this? Does anything kind of surprise you? Does anything like stick out as, oh, I've never thought about this before?
The statement unwillingness to admit of an evil report.
Yes.
I wonder how do we do that when there are probably true and legitimate evil reports happening from people in power all the time?
Yes. Yeah. I think that whole middle section is like that's the part that sticks out to me, like loving and desiring and rejoicing in our neighbors' good names, freely acknowledging their gifts and graces, defending their innocency, like readiness to receive a good report, like we're eager to hear good things about our neighbors, but an unwillingness to admit of an evil report. We're like hesitant to hear things that accuse them of wrong. And I actually, as I was thinking about this, David French, I'm sure that some of you are familiar with him. He had written something on his blog several months ago, kind of looking at it was sort of looking at conspiracy theories and all of these different things and kind of filtering that through the 9th commandment. And he actually picks up on this particular question, this idea of like an unwillingness to receive an evil report. And he says, what does it mean to have an unwillingness to admit of an evil report? Engage politically. He says it doesn't mean being gullible. It doesn't mean rejecting the idea that our opponents can do grievous, scandalous things. It means addressing claims of wrongdoing with charitable skepticism. And the wilder the claim, the greater the skepticism. Our moral posture should deter slander. Mm-hmm. And I think that last sentence, that our moral posture, we should be so shaped by a concern for truth that we deter these kind of slanderous claims about people. Again, that doesn't mean being gullible. That doesn't mean kind of brushing things under the rug and just pretending that there aren't things to be concerned about. But it does mean having this kind of appropriate skepticism. I think there's a sense in which we like when we think about kind of the way partisanship plays into this. It probably means that we need to extend the same sort of charity towards people who disagree with us as we would want them to extend to us. And we should probably also have kind of the same level of skepticism that we tend to put towards other people, towards people on kind of our own team, wherever we fall in the political spectrum. And I want us to kind of think through now, that sort of frames here kind of the obligations here, but kind of why is this important? What are the factors involved here? And I think there's like a practical level, and then there's kind of the deeper level, kind of a theological level. And practically, one of the reasons why I think this matters is because we, like as a culture, are absolutely terrible at this. I've referenced this before a few different times, but there's an organization called More in Common that has built this website called The Perception Gap, that's kind of looking at the different perceptions that people have depending where they fall on kind of the political spectrum, looking at people on the other side, what do they think over here? And like we mentioned before, it's kind of looking at what's the gap between that perception and the reality. What are the kind of motivations and intentions that we sometimes falsely ascribe to other people, and what they're actually kind of believing and thinking and trying to accomplish. And just as what we were talking about this just a few moments ago, Kevin brought this up, like at the base level, we have the fact that like our own sin nature causes us to want to distort truth for our own advantage. But then we also have this reality that every time we watch the news, every time we listen to podcasts, every time we listen to the radio, the things we read online, sometimes even from like supposedly Christian sources, are kind of like actively tempting and trying to teach us to believe the worst about people who don't share our views, people who don't think like us. And I would love to hear, like, what are some of the ways? I mean, this could be aware of the fact that we probably have people on this Zoom call right now who land in lots of different places. But I would love to hear, like, what are some of the ways that you've seen this play out? It doesn't necessarily have to be specific examples. It also could be kind of broader dynamics. How do you see people believing the worst about others and sort of allowing that to kind of shape the way they think and engage here? If you don't come up with any, I have a few examples.
Well, I can think of one right off. I don't know if this is going through or not.
Yeah.
The idea that the Black Lives Matter crowd is fundamentally Marxist. I didn't need that label to, frankly, to be suspect when they're saying defund the police, without which entity collectively we would have been run over by evil long ago. But that label Marxist is out there a lot in political circles on the right, as though that carries great weight. And
Yep.
So there.
Yeah, that gets thrown around sort of in some ways of like, I'm attaching this to things I don't like, regardless of whether it has like any direct connection to what's being talked about or affirmed.
Right. Back in the 50s, they, the communist label was attached to a lot of stuff that put a squeeze on people out on the left coast in some famous ways, and that there's a blacklisting thing, and so there's all kinds of ripples to those kinds of labels that are troublesome. Our culture suffered because of those labels, and yet got some steel in its spine also. So it's a constant dynamic.
Yep. Yeah, and like even like talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, for example, like that's a super complicated thing to start to lean into because it's very decentralized. It like represents lots of different groups and lots of different perspectives, even under one umbrella. And so it's like really hard to talk about something like that, even as like a unified entity. Even if there are things in common, there are so many different things represented there. I think that's almost every political like conversation we could bring up. There are so many different things that we could tease out and try to identify. I think one way that like I see this playing out is the way that we latch on to claims that make our opponents look bad. This sort of goes to what we were we're talking about with kind of the labels of like, oh, I'm putting this on. It might not actually, line up with reality, but I can say this because that kind of allows me to push it aside. But we latch on to claims that make our opponents look bad without really asking, kind of, is this true? Does this line up with reality? Kyan mentioned earlier, sometimes this looks like kind of like passing along information, passing along claims that could be false or inaccurate without really doing the work to kind of fact check. Is this good? Is this true? Other times it looks like kind of twisting facts and like emphasizing some things and sort of brushing other things under the rug. We sort of give half truths without giving the whole picture, because if we gave the whole picture, it would not be the slam dunk that we want it to be. Another way that I think that this happens.
Can I interject something?
Yeah, go for it.
So a couple things. First of all, I think there's an emphasis on fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that the church struggles with.
Yep.
Is, let's be afraid of this and let's be afraid of that. And, all of the different things that we're supposed to be afraid of and run away from,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that sort of thing. When I first came to India, I went to a different church on the south side, and I got involved in a group of artists that would gather about once a month. And some of them claimed to be Christians, some of them claimed to be Satanists, some of them said that they were paganists, some of them were atheists, but they came together as artists to hang out and share with one another, and lots of photographers and models. And so it was an opportunity to get to know some people and hopefully, be able to share the gospel. But my small group, which was mostly older people that I was a part of at that church, were very, very against my going and hanging out with these people. And I remember, finally having a conversation with one of them who was they were genuinely concerned about me. And I was like, listen, if I don't hang out with these people, and show them who Jesus is, then who is going to do that? Because, you're too scared. And right now, Doug and I have a little bookstore kind of a place that we go to on a regular basis, which is very new age. It's one of those places that the church tells you, oh, don't go in there, super scary, all sorts of horrible things, and depending on what denomination, there's demons in there and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, there probably are, but we know that that's where God wants us. And it's as a side note, it's frustrating to, go to your brothers and sisters in Christ and be like, hey, can you pray for us? We're, trying to minister. And they're like, what?
Hold on.
There? Yeah. So, and then the other thing is, I appreciated what you just said about only telling half truths, the whole defund the police thing. I can understand how it sounds like they want to completely defund it, but that's not actually what that means. If you look it up, defund the police is the same as defunding schools, although one would be probably better than the other. Schools have been defunded for years and years and years. They're not non-existent. It's not that they don't have any funding. They just don't have as much funding as they did before. So what they're saying is that police budgets are overblown, they're bloated, they've got tanks and all sorts of stuff. I've seen them on my street. They had I can't remember what it's called, a bobcat. I think it's like a tank, that because some guy was holed up in his house with a gun, I think, and so they showed up with like armored vehicles, and it was crazy. But they're saying, listen, the police don't need these sorts of things, and they don't need all of the money that the government is giving them right now. So just as an explanation, that's what they mean when they say defund the police. They don't mean completely take all of the funding away.
Yeah, no, I think both the reality of like this guilt by association sort of thing, where it's like, depending on the people we spend time, like these are some of the ways that we see this sort of like, okay, we are have the potential of bearing false witness when we sort of say, oh, like because this person is kind of associated with these people or this group, then therefore it means all sorts of things over there. And then there's also the reality of most of these like conversations about any particular topic are very, very complicated. And so like this is like, we have to be able to kind of take all of the different factors into consideration when we're doing this. So that's sort of like the practical level of like why this is important. And then I think even more deeply, the sort of theological level, why like we as believers ought to be radically committed to truth, even when it's inconvenient to the things we're trying to accomplish, is because we worship the one who is himself truth. Jesus says that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And obviously there are lots of things that we could say there. But part of that is like, we can't play fast and loose with truth, with reality, in order to kind of accomplish the things that we want. And so I think one of the things that should make our politics, our political engagements unique as believers is a commitment to truth over winning. Like we should desire to affirm what is good and true, and reflect, like charitably describe even the positions of people we might disagree with. We ought to be so kind of even-handed and committed to truth that we're kind of ready to willingly disadvantage ourselves when we could kind of twist things to accomplish the things that we want to do. So obviously lots of things that we could unpack here. We only have a few minutes left this morning. And I think I do still want to move in this direction, but the last thing that I wanted to kind of question I wanted us to cover is how do we learn to do this? What are some of the practices that we can kind of instill and learn to live out as Jesus forms us into people who are committed to truth? And I want us to take, this will probably, if people have to hop off to get to the 11 o'clock service, if you're traveling from home, you totally have the freedom to jump off whenever you need to. But I'm actually going to drop a document in the chat box. And I want us to once again kind of break off into breakout rooms and read and discuss this together. I think it'll probably take about 5 minutes to read out loud. And then we'll spend some time discussing it together. And so what this is it's an excerpt from a book from Tim Keller. And it's not even specifically geared towards politics itself, but he has this section on what he calls gospel polemics. And it's sort of like, how do we disagree with each other well as believers? And so I'm going to pull this up and drop it in the chat here. And let's see. Okay, I just sent it. Does everyone see that popping up in your chat box? Okay, so this is a 2-page PDF that talks about some of the kind of practices that Keller emphasizes in this book. And so I want us to read and discuss this. And really the question that I want us to walk away with is, which of these practices, which of these commitments do you personally find most difficult, and why? And so once again, we're going to split off into breakout rooms, about 5 people per group. We'll come back together in about 10 minutes and then close. So we'll probably be bumping up until the 11 o'clock time again. If you need to hop off, totally fine. But I will see you shortly. All right, welcome back. I'm sorry if conversations were cut short. I noticed just a minute ago that there were a couple of folks who had messaged saying that they did not get the document. I'll try to send it again, but hopefully someone in every group had it and was able to kind of.
And Sam, I just sent out a link on the chat so people you can access it just on. There's a blog
online
post that puts it, so you can access it online if for whatever reason you found it difficult to download the PDF.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Kyan. Yeah, so we'll probably wrap up here in just a minute, but I would love to hear if maybe two folks are willing to share as they kind of read through these different practices, and I think how does he describe it? I think he said ground rules or something like that. Rules of engagement for engaging with folks who disagree. Obviously, this is geared primarily towards thinking through theological disagreements, but I think everything Keller says is very, very applicable to our political disagreements as well. But would love to hear, which of these do you find most difficult and why, if two people are willing to share.
So Sam, I told my small group that the one I found most difficult is probably the most important one, and that's number 5, seeking to persuade, not antagonize your opponents. That it is so easy to think that the purpose of these conversations is victory. And of course, when you think the purpose is victory, you do what's necessary to win, which is frequently things that are not particularly relevant to what is true. And it constantly reminding ourselves, I'm doing this because I want both of us to be edified and God to be glorified. Like that's it. That's it. It's not about who wins. And it's just so easy to miss that in the moment.
Yes. Yeah. Even when you're in a place where it's like, I need to, like, there is real difference here. And like, I think that you have not like adequately considered these factors, and I'm trying to persuade you to do so. Also doing that in a way like there is totally a chance that this person sees something that for some reason I can't, that I actually need to start considering. And so how do we do that well and enter in kind of like we're trying to learn together instead of I'm trying to kind of own my opponent.
So a couple of things from an autistic perspective. First off, conversations are hard for people who are autistic, and Doug in particular has told me that it's really difficult, and I've experienced this not as much as him. It's really difficult to process things at the drop of a hat. And so people want to have a rapid fire conversation. They want to have an immediate response from you. And, I have to remember with Doug, I'm trying to learn that especially if it's an emotionally charged thing, I have to say my piece and then shut up and maybe even say, listen, we can come back after you've had time to think and talk about this. So that's one thing that kind of makes it more difficult for us to engage. And then the other thing is that autistic people are much more interested in the truth, sometimes to the point where we have trouble trying to figure out how to express things in a way that isn't going to hurt somebody's feelings. So we'll inadvertently hurt feelings, not because we're deliberately trying to, but just because we're so blunt and candid sometimes that it hurts people's feelings. But we're just trying to be truthful, and we are genuinely interested in getting to the truth.
Yes.
So that's from a high function.
And also, I would recommend people listening to Jerem Barr's Apologetic Outreach course from Covenant, because that covers how to go about approaching people who you don't agree with.
Yes. That is, I think both Abby's point that like people process things differently, and so we have to take that into account as we're seeking to have these conversations, and just recognizing, hey, like the way that I am thinking through and processing something might not be exactly the same as the person I'm speaking with, and so creating space for that to happen well, I think is really important. And Jerem's apologetic stuff is super, super good. And that I wasn't even thinking about that in prepping this class, but I'm going to try to track that down. And in the email we send out this week, include the link to that, because if you have time, I think that would be a great thing for everyone to spend time with if you have interest and availability. Okay, it is 10:58. I really appreciate you hanging on in Zoom land for a little bit longer than we typically do. It's also very good to see your faces, even though we're in different rooms. But I hope you have a good day, and we'll keep you posted on what plans for next week look like. So keep an eye out for that, and we will be back again soon. Thanks, y'all.